Do you know why Pep is the greatest coach of this generation? Yeah, that's because he changed the game and now has a bunch of disciples and minions trying to copy him. Don't get me wrong at all, I love Carlo Ancelotti and Fergie. I adore Mourinho and Wenger, but what coaching legacy do they have when it comes to the next generation of managers? Gary Neville, Carrick, Vieira, Thierry Henry, Van Persie? Please don't piss me off. Mourinho's disciples are Thiago Motta, Frank Lampard and Nuno Espirito Santo, haram ball experts. In fact, getting called the next Mourinho is now a curse. The last person called the next Mourinho was Ruben Amorim, so that tells you all you need to know. But with Pep Guardiola, it just hits different. When someone is called the next Pep or mini Pep, you know the person is about to be a great manager. Guardiola's influence in football is unmatched. Pep himself is a product of Sir Bobby Robson and Johan Cruyff, and everything else that comes with that La Masia philosophy. Some of the next Guardiolas are out there right now, top of the league, deep in the Champions League run, looking like the next big thing. Two of Pep's disciples just faced each other in the final. In fact, the last Champions League semi-finals featured 3 Pep disciples and you know Alhaji Diego Simeone. So today I want to talk about the top coaches who have been called the next Pep Guardiola to figure out which of them has what it takes to be the next big thing. Which brings us before anyone else to Luis Enrique. He is the only name in this video who never actually learned from Pep because they came up together. Luis Enrique played alongside Pep at Barcelona in the late 1990s. He then became the coach of Barcelona B from 2008 to 2011 when Pep was running the first team. Enrique took over Roma in 2011, Celta in 2013, and then in 2014 he inherited the Barcelona senior job and immediately turned the MSN front three of Messi, Suarez and Neymar into the best attacking unit in football history. He also won a continental treble in 2015 and equaled Pep's old record of 11 consecutive league wins along the way. After leaving Barcelona, Enrique took Spain to a Euro 2020 semi-final. Then in 2023 he went to PSG and did the impossible. He got rid of Mbappe, bet the project on young talent like Joao Neves, Desire Doué and Bradley Barcola, and beat Inter Milan 5-0 in the 2025 Champions League final. That win made him only the second coach ever to win the continental treble at 2 different clubs. The first was Pep, of course. Stylistically, Enrique is more vertical than Pep, more comfortable letting the ball go briefly to spring an attack. And as we sit here in 2026, Luis Enrique just dumped Vincent Kompany's Bayern out of the Champions League semi-finals 6-5 on aggregate.
I've been managing more than 15 years and I think it was the most exciting match that I've managed.
He has also won back-to-back Champions League trophies with PSG after defeating Mikel Arteta in the final. Then we get to the man whose name and face are permanently attached to Guardiola, Mikel Arteta. You probably know Arteta as Pep's assistant at City from 2016 to 2019. But the connection goes way back. Pep and Arteta first met at La Masia when Arteta was a teenager and Pep was already in the senior team. But their paths diverged when Arteta left Barcelona. Years later, Arteta started his coaching badges in 2015 during a long injury spell and even spent time training Arsenal's under-13s before he was actually offered a role inside the Arsenal Academy. He turned it down to go to Manchester and learn under Pep. Arteta was supposed to be the next in line at City after Guardiola, but he couldn't wait. Once Unai Emery was sacked, Arteta took the Arsenal job and turned the club into the most consistent threat to City's reign. Just like Pep shipped Joe Hart and later did the same to Cancelo when he stopped fitting the project, Arteta got rid of Ozil, Aubameyang and even a young Ramsdale without sentiment. He shares the same ruthlessness when it comes to getting rid of players. The football is more physical than Pep's set-piece dark art by Nicholas Hover and consistent haram ball masterclasses. To be fair, it made Arsenal resilient and they're on the cusp of something great. Arsenal have reached 2 consecutive Champions League semi-finals for the first time in the entire history of the club. Even though they narrowly lost to PSG in the finals, they managed to win the Premier League for the first time in 22 years. The blot on the copybook is the head-to-head record. In 17 meetings against Pep, Arteta has won exactly 4 times with 3 draws. The student keeps showing up and the master keeps cooking him. One of the first coaches to be called the next Pep Guardiola was actually Erik ten Hag. But okay, before you click off the video, just hear me out first. The Erik ten Hag we saw at Manchester United was a shadow of himself, or the person we thought he could be. Before coming to United, Ten Hag was running Bayern's reserves team between 2013 and 2015, while Pep ran the senior side. He was literally called Mini Pep because he soaked up the philosophy like a sponge. And to be fair, they both look alike. After Guardiola left Bayern, Erik ten Hag took his bald head full of ideas back to that Ajax team that beat Juventus and Real Madrid in the 2019 Champions League and went all the way to the semi-finals. That run was one of the most beautiful stories in European football at that time, and Ten Hag's reputation was at an all-time high. Then Manchester United happened. Ten Hag bought Onana and Anthony and a lot of deadwood, beefed with Jadon Sancho, then lost a public fight with Cristiano Ronaldo. His football was horrible and looked nothing like Guardiola or what the Ajax team produced. But even in the chaos, Ten Hag managed to win an FA Cup and a Carabao Cup before he was finally fired in 2024. He then went to Bayer Leverkusen in the summer of 2025 to replace Xavi Alonso. Well, we know that didn't last long because he was fired after 3 matches. His stock is currently low, but I believe he will have a second coming. But who's next? Xavi Hernandez, the actual brain of Pep's treble-winning Barcelona side. He took over Al Sadd in Qatar in 2019 and won 7 trophies in 2 years. Don't ask me what the heck Xavi was doing in Qatar of all places. For some reason, Barcelona brought him home in November 2021 to help them out of a crisis. And the gamble paid off for real because Xavi delivered the 2022-2023 La Liga title and lifted the Super Copa. But Xavi wasn't anything like Pep Guardiola. Xavi's Barca was more direct, more willing to launch a long ball, far more comfortable in transition than vintage Pep. The big philosophical similarity is the obsession with the ball, but keeping possession was difficult for that young Barcelona side. The big difference was that Pep historically had elite ball carriers, whereas Xavi's squad had Pedri and De Jong, who never stayed fit consistently. After a chaotic 2023-2024 season, Xavi was replaced by Hansi Flick, and he's gone off the radar ever since. Well, there's Kompany. Vincent Kompany took an entirely different route, and he is honestly the most fun storyline in the whole Pep Guardiola tree. Kompany played 3 full seasons under Pep at City, captained the Centurion side, and once compared working with Pep to doing 10 years of university in 2. He started as a player manager at Anderlecht, took over Burnley in 2022 and turned a club famous for hoofball into an actual passing side. Under Kompany, Burnley won the championship with over 100 points, scoring 87 goals at a 65% average possession. Then of course the Premier League ate them alive because it turns out it's hard to play out from the back when your centre backs are championship level at best. And so Burnley got relegated. But guess what? In a move that shocked the entire football media, Bayern Munich hired the recently relegated Kompany in the summer of 2024 after Pep's recommendation. And what did he do? He helped Bayern win the title in his very first season after dethroning the invincible Bayer Leverkusen. As we sit here in 2026, Bayern have broken their own all-time Bundesliga goal-scoring record with games to spare. And they just dumped Real Madrid out of the Champions League quarterfinals 6-4 on aggregate, and narrowly lost to PSG 5-6 in one of the most entertaining ties in the UCL history. Kompany's Bayern look more high-octane than vintage Pep, more direct, more willing to score 6 and concede 3, but the core principles are exactly the same. It's like watching a hybrid of Klopp and Pep. Then Enzo Maresca came to England in 2020 on Manuel Pellegrini's recommendation to coach the Manchester City under 23s. So he was basically groomed to replace Pep, which he has already done now. Maresca won the Premier League 2 in his first season, took a brief and unsuccessful Parma job, then returned to City to help deliver the treble in 2023. Maresca then went to Leicester in 2023 to drag them out of the Championship. After winning the championship, he took the Chelsea job. In his first season alone, he won the Conference League and the Club World Cup, smacking PSG 3-0 in the final, and got Chelsea back into the Champions League. Maresca ball is a 4-3-3 morphing into a 3-2-5 in possession, fullbacks inverting into the double pivot, with Kopama roaming as a number 10. Maresca even openly draws ideas from chess, which is exactly the kind of thing a Pep disciple would say. The problem is that Maresca ball against deep block is quiet. It was all possession with few goals, and despite all the silverware, he was sacked in January 2026 after a run of 3 Premier League defeats and quiet rumors that he had been chatting to City about replacing Pep. Pep, for his part, has publicly called Maresca one of the best managers in the world. And since Pep has walked away from the Etihad, do not be surprised when the equally barred Maresca carries on his legacy. Which brings us finally to the man whose tenure has somehow defined his entire conversation in the last few months. Xavi Alonso. Alonso played under Guardiola at Bayern from 2014 to 2017. The apprenticeship was unique because Alonso had previously worked under Rafa Benitez, Mourinho, Pellegrini and Ancelotti. By the time he arrived in Munich at 32, he had already passed every coaching course at every elite university in football, and Pep was the final stop. He took those ideas to Real Sociedad B for 3 years, and then Bayer Leverkusen came calling in October 2022. After stabilizing the club, Alonso took Leverkusen to an unbeaten run for the entire 2023-2024 Bundesliga season and broke Bayern's 11-year domination. It only took a Lookman masterclass in the Europa League final to stop them from completing the season unbeaten. Real Madrid naturally came calling. He took the job in May 2025 and tried to bring all of it with him. The 3-4-3, the inverted Trent Alexander-Arnold experiment, the pressing structure involving every player on the pitch. And it ran straight into the immovable object of the modern Real Madrid dressing room. Vinicius Jr. was furious about being substituted in the Clásico. Mbappe was caught on camera ignoring him after the Supercopa final, and star players who had spent years winning Champions Leagues on vibes did not particularly enjoy being told where to stand. Alonso lost that Supercopa final to Barcelona on January 11th of 2026, and 24 hours later, he was replaced by Alvaro Arbeloa from Castilla. And here's the part that should genuinely interest you. Liverpool, his old club, has finally sacked Arne Slot, but for some reason they refused to sign Alonso. We'll see how things pan out for Alonso at Chelsea, but it looks like a generational fumble by Liverpool. All of which leaves the obvious question of who is actually winning this race to become the next Guardiola. Arteta is the closest stylistic match and has actually dethroned his mentor Guardiola. Maresca has literally taken his spot at the Etihad, and he has the same bad look as Guardiola. Kompany has taken Pep's vibe and made it more chaotic and probably more entertaining, and he's already laying the groundwork for a Bayern dynasty. Alonso is the most theoretically gifted of the bunch, and he's heading for a reset that could either define a decade of European football or quietly end a career depending on where he lands. What this whole theory really tells you is that Pep's biggest legacy is the people he got to buy into his vision. Every modern manager now has to play out from the back and pretend to love tiki-taka if they want to stand a chance. The truth is that the next Pep might not actually be any of these men. He might be some kid right now in his bedroom watching city clips on TikTok. But until that kid shows up, these are the ones we have to look out for